Welcome to your next daring adventure. You know, the four of us are so thrilled that you're moving through this journey because for each of us, it truly was a life-changing journey. So we ask you again to trust the process. Make sure you go through the entire process because we know the value that we've gotten from it, and we trust you're going to get as much, if not more, value from the program.
So before we move forward, take a moment and let's look at your wins, realizations, any ahas or cognitions that you had as you went through the last process. And the reason why that is such an important process is because if you don't recognize and acknowledge your own wins and ahas and realizations, you can tend to get a little, it drops your mood level. You can even get
A little grouchy.
Grouchy, thank you. Snarly with yourself because you've overlooked all these wonderful things that you've realized. And so it's a very important task to sit down and recognize those wins. So that's one of the next steps.
Excellent. And if you didn't feel you had the wins and the ahas and the realizations, you may want to go back and re-look at that last daring adventure. Because just as Celia is saying, celebrating your wins, we haven't talked about that, but celebrating your wins is crucial.
Yeah.
Because if you're having all these wins and not acknowledging them, your mind and your body goes, hey, why should I keep going forward? You're not even acknowledging me, right?
Yep.
So the wins are really important.
And it's a way of internalizing those wins too. One, you're acknowledging them, so your mind and body can say thank you. And two, if you don't celebrate them and you just keep moving forward, you're constantly moving. You're not stopping and internalizing everything that you've done to this day.
Which really takes that incubation step away again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is when you don't stop and leave the space.
And celebrating your wins could be a ritual that you have. I mean, that's a great ritual. Every day celebrate one win. It can be something very small. It could be something very big.
Yeah.
It could be that I made a phone call I wasn't, I was a little apprehensive to make, but I made it.
Yeah.
It could be anything.
Yeah, even your nighttime ritual. We talked a little bit about morning rituals,
right.
But a nighttime ritual is, what's one good thing that happened today, one win I had.
Yeah.
And it could be something as small. My husband says a lot with ice cream. So he'll eat the ice cream and he'll get down and he'll leave one little tablespoon of ice cream and he'll say, I'm going to count this as a win because I did not eat the entire jar. So that's his win for the day. But it can be anything, and that could be part of your ritual in the evening.
Yeah.
And just one last point on the wins. It's really, really important to acknowledge the small wins. I never think a win is too small to acknowledge because it takes a lot of small wins, lots of wins of all sizes to make one big win. Think about it. And it's all part of the process.
It is. And if you're feeling a little down or a little grumpy or something, it's very possible that you have not been acknowledging your wins. And I find if I ever get in that mood, that I just sit down and go, okay, 3 wins today. Give me 3 wins over the last few days. Boom, boom, boom. Mood level goes right up.
Yeah.
So celebrating your wins is really, really important.
Yeah.
So thanks for bringing that up, Seal.
You're welcome.
So in an earlier adventure, we talked about the importance of presence, being present, being with somebody, and just being there. And you were telling us, Seal, about a friend of yours who had a really great
there's
great
a friend of
outcome.
mine that, thank you, Kim. There's a friend of mine that I've done some work with, and she did some work around presence. And so I followed up with her a couple of months ago, and I'm like, so how's it been? How's it going in life? What have you noticed? Well, she said everyone has noticed how happy she is and that something's changed about her. They can't put their finger on. They don't know what's happened to her other than she just seems so much at peace and so much happier.
That's so great.
Yeah.
That's so great.
Yeah.
So when we talked about presence, you and Lisa talked about the breath and how important just taking a breath can bring you presence, can bring you present time. And there's a great author named Eckhart Tolle, and he wrote The Power of Now and a New Earth. And he told a story about this new big self-development organization had all this curriculum, courses and courses of curriculum. And they brought him in and said, which ones do you think are most valuable? And he said, well, I could never choose because there's so many to choose from, and I'm sure they're all great. He said, if you did nothing else except every day took a breath or 2 or 3, and that's all you did in your personal development, he said in 1 year you'll get more value than going through all these courses.
Wow.
So that's the power of the breath, and that's the power of being present. So great author, Eckhart Tolle. So on our review of last,
So in the last adventure, we had you write down the why behind what makes you happy. So you went through your list of what makes you happy and you put a why meaning behind it. And the reason we had you do that was to go to a deeper level. Again, to start peeling back that onion. And that why continues to add meaning to who you are and bringing out what's most meaningful to you.
And if you remember, the meaning is what gets us deeper and really taps into that meaning network.
Yeah. And in the neuroscience, it also releases those chemicals that make you feel good. So you continue to stay on a more positive level every day.
and I would just ask you as you're going through your list and the why behind it and all the things that make you happy, notice do you have a little more energy? Do you have a little more brightness? Do you have a little more happiness just from going through this process? And this is just one very simple process. So we've been referring to what's most meaningful. And what we'd like to do is share some examples of people who we know who have gone through a similar process and discovered what was most meaningful to them. So what were some of the examples that people came up with?
So one of the examples was someone had noticed that when they went through all this work, that the freedom to choose, the freedom of choice,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So the choice to do something or not to do something, right? Even the choice to be happy or not to be happy, that they really had that choice within them, and being able to have that choice was what was most meaningful.
Yeah. Yes, to have that freedom to make the choice where before she didn't feel she had the freedom to make a
Right.
choice.
She felt very stuck.
Yes, and she felt trapped.
And also, she had that awareness of her choice on how to feel about different things. You know, if something negative happened, she had the choice on, well, I can go down that path of feeling negative, or I can choose to feel happy about the lesson or something that came out of it.
It really reframed her mindset. Yeah.
And I remember another gentleman, he was talking about his life was very chaotic and he was not happy and there was a lot of drama in his life. And he finally got down to what was most meaningful to him was a life of peace. And he figured out instantly how he could have peace in his life through his work, through his relationships, by going through a process like this and discovering that for himself. So his was a life of peace.
And there's someone else then that had that what was most meaningful was wonder and discovery.
Yes, I
So in
love
a
that.
deep sense of wonder and discovery. And this gentleman really has made it his life's work
Yes.
in this area.
Yeah, and this is what he does. I mean, he's like a little kid because he's always wanting to figure things out and discover this, and he looks at everything with awe and like the curiosity of a little kid.
And I've never seen him in a bad mood. He's always happy.
Yes.
Because he comes from that mindset, or what's most meaningful to him, wonder and discovery in every situation. And he's always happy.
And that's what drives his decisions. He loves to research. He loves to learn. He loves to change. He's trying to change some big things in the world right now. But it's a great example of how once you discover what's most meaningful, how you can actually design your life so that your life flows along that line. Yeah,
Absolutely.
That's pretty cool. Okay, so the next teaching piece, again, is part of the process, part of peeling the layers of the onion. And this next piece that we want to talk about is something that we practice. It's what's called a generalized principle. It's something that I've lived my life by for like 30 plus years. And it comes from a man named Buckminster Fuller. He was a futurist, a visionary, inventor, architect of the geodesic dome. And a generalized principle is something that's true in all cases. So if I take a pen and I drop it, gravity is going to take it to the ground. That's a principle. It's true in all cases. So what Bucky set out to do was discover the generalized principles of the universe. And one of these principles is a thing called precession. And why don't we just start with a little demonstration here. So what precession is in nature, an example of it is here is now my great artistic ability. That's a bumblebee. Okay, and in nature, what does a bumblebee seek? Bumblebee seeks out
Nectar.
nectar
Flowers.
from the flower. Okay. So the bumblebee goes towards its goal of nectar. And what happens is as it goes towards its goal, it gets to the flower, it's getting its nectar, and in the process, its body gets covered in pollen. So the bumblebee goes to the next flower, seeking nectar, gets the nectar, and in that process, the pollen on his body gets rubbed onto the next flower. And so actually what's happening, according to the principle of precession, is at 90 degrees, and it's always at 90 degrees, which is a scientific thing. Really what's happening as he's going towards his goal, the bumblebee is accomplishing his true purpose, which is pollinating flowers. Okay, so how does that play out for you and me in real life? So, looks like this. Here you are, and you have a goal. Let's say your goal is to buy your first cash flow property. So, you have the goal, and this is the key. This is really the key to this principle called precession. Because as you're going towards the goal to buy your first property, that puts you in motion. Kind of going back to our be, do, have. You've got to do. The doing is very important. And the why it's important to be in motion is because this is according to precession. What happens at 90 degrees, because you're in motion, going for your first property. Let's say, okay, so you're searching for your property, and the first property you're so excited about, and oh, sorry, it's sold. Okay, so you go to the next property and you make an offer and it's accepted. Yay, okay, great, it's accepted. And you start doing your due diligence and looking at all the pieces of the property, and you find out, oh, it's got a leaky roof, and oh my God, the sewer system is bad, and oh, but on the other hand, maybe I could add another bedroom, I could increase the rent, and all these things are happening, and you finally close on the property, and you have a positive cash flow, and all of these things are happening. There's a lot of other things happening too. Maybe you're meeting new people, making new contacts. Maybe because you've got this first property, now you're involved in this investment club and you're learning about new investments. So all of these things are happening, and Bucky Fuller calls all of these things the precessional effects. And this is what we call magic. Because you're in motion going towards a goal, all these other things are happening. Some you know, some you don't. But if you're not in motion, nothing happens. So, Rhonda,
So often, we're seekers of knowledge, and we surround ourselves a lot of times by seekers of knowledge. And so we read books and we study and we attend conferences, and we're really doing this personal development. But sometimes we can get stuck in that.
Yes.
That we are forgetting those other three pieces of transformation: the action, the feedback, and the incubation. And so we get stuck.
Yes.
And we stop being in motion.
Yes.
And when we stop being in motion, our true effects cannot be had.
That's correct. That's correct.
So I had a friend, for example, that really, really wanted this job in San Francisco. So seeks out the job, makes the calls, makes it happen, so excited. And this has been years in planning of wanting this job. So gets there, and it wasn't full time. So this owner decides that he is going to reach out to another company to see if he can use them a couple days a week. Well, as he's in motion, going towards this job that was his dream job,
Right.
turns out that this other is really, really what he wanted,
Yes.
which he would have never known that this other existed if he wasn't in motion
So
going
that other
towards that.
position was a precessional effect of him going
Absolutely.
towards his goal.
And you have to be aware of that.
Yes.
How often do we miss when we're moving? We get so laser focused on, I want that goal.
Yes.
that we're not aware and we're not present of all those things. We're not taking the feedback around us.
Yes.
We're not letting it soak in.
Yes, and it's a really good point too, because as you're going towards your goal, you're going to have pluses and minuses. And if you have so many, if it's all minuses, you better pay attention and go, maybe something here is not working and maybe I better change the goal or change something that I'm doing. So you've got to be aware.
Yeah.
And reframing those minuses into what was my lesson.
Yes.
Because if you're not learning the lesson, then maybe you need to change your goal. But if you're learning your lesson, then maybe you're back on track to that
Yes.
goal.
Well, and that goes to the point here is that these, what we call minuses, aren't really minuses, because that maybe they're mistakes or maybe they're things that we didn't like to have happen to us. But because of that, if you learn the lesson, then you grow, then you get smarter, then you get better. So all of these things actually are all magical, right? They're all things that help us move forward. You know, we talk about making a mistake. A mistake is just shows us something we didn't know. That's all a mistake is. And if you learn from the mistake and move on, that helps you accelerate your growth and your learning path. So all of this stuff, even though we call it minuses and pluses, they're really all pluses if you take the time to be aware of what the lesson and the learning is behind it.
And willing to trust the process
Yes.
about it.
Yes. So nothing happens unless you're in motion, which goes back to the be, do, have, that if you're not doing, and that motion can't be just doing the same old thing. It's got to be going towards a goal that you're trying to achieve, something that you want to accomplish.
Right.
And then all this magic happens. And the last point of this is, just as the bumblebee, what Bucky Fuller says, at 90 degrees, as you're going towards your goal, at 90 degrees is also your true purpose. Now, I don't want to get hung up on, oh, I got to find my true purpose. Oh, I've got to find the thing that I'm supposed to do in my life. I don't subscribe to that. Maybe my true purpose is to educate women about money and business. I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I know that as long as I'm in motion, going towards a goal, doing good work, having a positive impact on people, that I'm going to create precessional effects. What I want to do in my life is create precessional effects and create the magic. The magic of when you meet somebody that you haven't seen for 10 years, and you meet them this day and they're exactly the person that you needed to meet that day, or your friend who got the job.
Right.
He wouldn't, if he wasn't in motion, that wouldn't have happened.
Yep.
So it's all the magic that happens because you're in motion. And to your point, Lisa, the negatives aren't really negatives. It's all part of the process.
They're opportunities.
Yes, they're opportunities. These are gems. They're golden nuggets in here. All of them are golden nuggets that are going to help you move forward on your path and your journey.
And they may feel like a negative or a minus at first, and you got to honor that emotion. You got to feel that emotion, because then you can move forward and get the lesson and what do I need to do next.
Yes, yes. And you, Seal, weren't you talking about something you were teaching at a seminar and you got bumped off a plane?
Oh, yeah, it was just last weekend. I was teaching a 5-day, and I got ready to go home on Saturday. Gorgeous weather. It had been raining a lot in Texas, and so I get to the airport, and all of a sudden I get this message that says your flight's been delayed by an hour. So I'm enjoying my Starbucks coffee, and then about 15 minutes later I get another message and said now it's been delayed 2 hours. I was like, that's crazy. So probably another 5 minutes went by, and then it said, okay, now you need to go to the ticket counter. This was like 4:45 in the evening. And I'm like, I get up to the ticket counter and they tell me that I need to be rerouted. I could maybe go through another airport and then end up going home at midnight. That wasn't going to happen. There was another event that was going on there in that city that I was going to have to miss because of my flight home. And so I ended up going back to the hotel, being with everyone that I wanted to be with, and then was asked to speak at this event, and it was a huge thing that I actually
huge
needed
win.
to be at.
It was a huge win.
Huge win. So yeah, it was a blessing. I feel sorry for the people on the plane. It was a mechanical failure, and that's where I was supposed to be.
See, so it looked like a negative. It looked like a minus.
It looked like a minus.
It looked like a minus,
Yeah.
and because you just went with it,
Yeah.
and you kept in motion.
Yeah.
You didn't just go to the hotel and go to sleep.
No.
You stayed in motion. Then all the processional effect of you having this great success at the seminar happens.
Yeah. I mean, even driving to the airport, I said, "Geez, I wish I were going with you guys. I don't want to go home." And then they drop me off, and I get checked through security and everything. I mean, it's another country, and then I just get my Starbucks and sit down and said, "Your flight's been delayed." And then I started thinking, "Uh-oh, maybe I'm not supposed to go home." And then, so yeah, it was perfect.
Yeah.
And then when I told the story, everybody in the audience was like, "Oh my gosh, you were supposed to be here."
Yeah.
So
that's the purpose of teaching this right now, is to show that, number one, you've got to be in motion, and you've got to be going towards a goal that's going to push you and stretch you. And as a result of that, all of these precessional effects, this magic will happen. And sometimes we're aware of it, and sometimes we're not. And the second point is that even though they might seem like minuses, they're actually pluses. Because if you learn the lesson and understand why this happened, that's going to make you so much smarter and so much wiser, and it's going to propel you moving forward in your business. So that's a very brief synopsis on a very complicated subject called precession. So, as we move forward on our next daring adventure, the purpose.
So the purpose of this next adventure is to reframe how you use the minuses or the negatives in your life. And we like to say the minuses versus the negative, because negative is just something, how we react to something. So just taking a minus event and reframing it, and every experience is a positive if you see the gem of the knowledge that it's going to give you.
One thing we've always said is when we've had something negative or minus happen, it's like at first you go, "Oh no," and then you go, "Okay, there's something good. There's something good to this, and we got to figure it out." And it takes the stress, it takes the resistance away, and when you may not see it immediately, right? You may not see what that gem is, that little nugget, but eventually you'll see it, and that's where growth and learning happens.
Especially if you're changing your mindset to be more aware of things.
Yes.
Then when those minuses happen, like Kim said, you may not see it right away, but if you're aware of it, that learning will come.
Yeah, there's a little something that goes off in your head that says, "Pay attention now."
Yeah, yeah. Pay attention, be aware, be present. Yeah.
Okay, so we are ready for our dare to act. So we've talked a lot about being in motion. We've talked about pluses and minuses, how to turn those minuses into opportunities. So what we want to do now is make it a little bit more personal. And we would like you to think of a minus in your life, maybe something small, maybe something a little bit bigger. It can be in any area of your life, personal, professional. And we want you to think of one or more lessons that you could have learned from that minus.
And this might be something that has been bothering you for a while. I know for me, upsets are often minuses. And if I get to the truth of the upset, the cause of the upset, because I'll tell you this, if there's an upset, if you're upset with somebody, I'm going to say 99.9% of the time, it's not that other person. It's something for you to learn. So an upset might be a minus.
And so some questions you can ask yourself is, why did I experience this? And what do I have to learn from this? And just listen. Your internal self will tell you. Those ideas or those thoughts will start coming up when you start asking those questions.
So we're really just trying to get you to reframe that minus into something more positive. And it might not be something that could happen today. It might not be something that can happen in a week, but it may be an opportunity or a lesson that comes out over time.
Yeah. And so often when we have something like a minus happen in our lives, the first thing we want to do is blame. Is if you're blaming somebody else for something that happened to you, they're in control, not you. So the purpose of understanding the cause of the mistake or the upset is to put you in control of your own life. So imagine if you lived your life where, I still don't like making mistakes. I still don't like experiencing the minuses, but now I really don't get too upset about them. because I know they're there for me to learn something. And if I can learn, I'm going to get better. So I really like this dare to act, to start reframing your mind. If you can start seeing the minuses and get the lessons from it and the learnings from that so that you grow, that's magical.
Yeah. And I just
That's
wanted
magical.
to add that sometimes we get stuck on trying to make a negative a positive. And sometimes it's not about fixing a situation or turning a bad situation into a positive situation, but it's reframing that negative or that minus into a lesson,
Yes.
which is different than reversing it into a positive.
Yes, exactly. And I have a great little story, about that. Let me find it here. There it is. Again, one of my favorite authors, Eckhart Tolle from A New Earth. And it's a story of, hang on. Oh, okay. So it's a story of a wise man who won an expensive car in a lottery. And his family and friends were very happy for them, and they came to celebrate. "Isn't it great?" they said. "You are so lucky." And the man smiled and said, "Maybe." For the first few weeks, he enjoyed driving the car. Then one day, a drunken driver crashed into his new car at an intersection, and he ended up in the hospital with multiple injuries. His family and friends came to see him and said, "That was really unfortunate." Again, the man smiled and said, "Maybe." While he was still in the hospital, one night there was a landslide and his house fell into the sea. Again, his friends came the next day and said, "Weren't you lucky to have been there in the hospital?" Again, he said, "Maybe." So I love this story because it's saying his friends are seeing it from negative and positive, minus and plus, and he's saying, let's see how it unfolds. Let's see where this takes us. And so I love that story. And I love this dare to act. So how to turn your minuses into pluses, if you can reframe that.
Yep.
God, that'd be
It's a big win.
That's a huge win. That will be a huge win. Matter of fact, when you do that on one little minus, celebrate.
Yeah.
So we want to remind you again of the 4 steps of transformation. They are
Information. So you got a lot of information in this one. So just remind you, go back and re-listen to it. Re-listen so you're getting all the information. Because I know for myself, when I go back to something and re-listen to it or reread it, I pick up something I didn't before. So that just continues the information and the learning.
Right.
And the next step is action. So your action, your dare to act, is to turn a minus into a plus and really think about it and go through and celebrate that win afterwards. The next step?
feedback.
How do you feel when you're bringing up that minus? What are the feelings? And sit with it and process it and be willing to let it go.
And are you even willing to look at some of them? Some of your minuses you might not even be willing to look at, so pay attention to that.
Yeah, what's that feeling? It's
Yeah.
like, no, I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
And just look at it.
And then the last step is the incubation.
And incubation is big on this piece as
It
well.
is big. And it's incubation over time.
Yeah.
For me, this piece, it took years really to conceptualize how this plays out in my life. And it was thinking it through, practicing it, practicing it, and really being aware.
Yeah. One other reminder is we have the Facebook page. Please go to it if you have questions, interact with the other women there. If you have questions, we'll answer, or the other women will answer. It's a really great resource. Some of the women have gone through the process. Others are going through the process. So you're going to find a lot of like-minded women on this Facebook.
And they're celebrating their wins on there.
And they are celebrating their wins, yes. And remember to remind you to celebrate your wins. I mean, I love to do that when I remember, every day, if I remember.
Yeah, and that can be part of that feedback process also, celebrating those wins.
Yes. And so what's coming up next in your next daring adventure?
Values. We're going to go over what are your values.
And a lot of women don't know what their values are, and we're going to actually give you a way, if you don't know, to discover what your values are, and then we're going to take it even deeper than that. So stay tuned, enjoy this daring adventure, and we'll see you at the next adventure.